So I'm delighted to be here tonight with two members of the full Circle Everest team that made history in May. Manoah, Ainuu, and Evan Green. And so tonight we're going to hear their story about their journey. So we'll start with you, Evan. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey from growing up in Queens to Dallas, now Albuquerque, and getting into cycling and climbing and snow sports and also the creative arts?
Yeah, sure. As Abby so graciously gave me that great intro, I was born in Queens in New York City, and then shortly thereafter moved to Dallas, Texas, where I grew up. And I was just kind of always into I guess alternative sports like skateboarding and just jumping my bike off of random curves and things like that. And then kind of like a representation matters kind of element of it. Sal Masekela, or Salema Masekela now, was the host of the X Games back in the day, and so he was pretty much the only black person that I saw in this whole the action sports world. But just him being there, I was like, yeah. Right. He had the dreads and fit right in, and everyone loved him. They come down from their snowboard runs and talk to Sal. So that kind of was what inspired me to keep going. And I also got cut from my 6th grade basketball team, so I wasn't really that good at normal sports. So I kind of always have been more interested in the outdoor adventure world, and luckily my parents would take us camping, and I was a Boy Scout growing up too. So I got my Eagle Scout and kind of went through that whole program. So that's really where I got a lot of my initial outdoor education and love. Where should I go from here? I guess my dad worked at JCPenney as a multimedia specialist, but he just kind of produced catalogs and videos and things like that for the department store JCPenney. So we always had computers and cameras around the house too, so I could play with that stuff as a kid. And so that was always kind of in my realm a little bit. And I went off to college eventually and studied geology and got a Bachelor of Science in Geology, because I kind of I was very interested in sciences and wanted to kind of morph that with my love for the outdoors too, and so that seemed like a great fit for me. And so I worked as a geologist for several years, and then recently I've just been freelancing in photo, video, kind of outdoor industry for different projects, and that's how I got involved with the full Circle team, essentially.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, thanks for having us and being interested in hearing about our trip and all that. But my name is Manoah Ainuu. I was born in LA, South Central. I lived there for the first 9 years of my life. My dad's Samoan, hence my Polynesian tattoo. That's kind of the only thing that'll give it away. My mom's Ethiopian. She was born in Ethiopia and moved over to LA. Didn't really do anything outdoors for the first 9 years of my life. We'd go to the beach and stuff, and I was always, germaphobe and scared of the outdoors as a kid. I would hate the feeling of sand in between my toes, and thank God that's changed. But my dad got a job in 2004 in Spokane, Washington, and that's shortly after moving there. That's kind of when I first started doing stuff in the outdoors through skiing. I started skiing at Schweitzer over in Idaho, really good mountain. That's where I learned how to ski with my high school friends and stuff. Graduated in 2013 and then moved over to Bozeman, Montana with my best friend, a snowboarder. Similar to Evan, I was always passionate about earth sciences and earth history. So I started studying geology. I also started skiing a lot more, so dropped out of school, took some breaks. And that's also where I started to climb. I'm a climber for the North Face now. Yeah, Conrad. Moving to Montana is really when my love for the outdoors was really solidified. I think for me, growing up in LA and then moving to Spokane, Washington, you know, which is similar to Bozeman, really homogenous, and I was always like the only dark-skinned person in all my classes and growing up. So that kind of built up a lot of social anxiety for myself, and going outside to these places with my close friends was a great way to like feel like myself and feel comfortable. Yeah, I've started rock climbing and started ice climbing through the help of Conrad and stuff, lending me some gear. Yeah, there's some glacial ice at base camp in Nepal. But yeah, since I stopped going to school and all that, was working full time, climbing full time as well, and eventually I met this really awesome dude that some of you may know named Dr. Fred Campbell. I looked up to him, you know, just through like Instagram posts or whatever. I was like, oh sweet, another black trad climber. And there was this event down in Alabama called Color the Crag. It was like the first, you know, diverse climbing festival. And through that, you know, Fred got onto the North Face, and later I did as well. And we were teaching at Ouray this one year, I think it was like 4 years ago, at the ice festival there. And we were at Camp Bird Road, and Fred and I were like right next to each other, and we turned around and saw this like old dude with dreads. A lot of you may know Philip Henderson. Now we call him Uncle Phil, yeah. And yeah, all three of our minds were blown simultaneously. You know, we were like, dang, there's three of us with, you know, that are with melanin and, you know, locked up hair and all that. So yeah, we just started talking at that fest, and we were like, yo, we should get together and do some trips, you know. Yeah, it was kind of a long process. I think 3 years after talking and finally coming upon like climbing in Nepal, Sagarmatha, Mount Everest. Phil's been working with the KCC, the Kumbu Climbing School, and the Alex Lowe Charitable Foundation for the past 10 years or so. So his roots there are really deep, you know, it's family there for him. And, you know, a lot of us have seen the change in the outdoor industry and in our country with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd being murdered, but in order to like push diversity and really get people outside of our communities to pay attention, Mount Everest was the obvious thing, you know. A lot of people have asked Phil, why Mount Everest? And it's like, well, if we went and climbed like Mount Rainier, would anyone notice? Would anyone even know what that mountain is outside of our communities? So yeah, that's kind of how the trip came together. And you know, Phil's been doing stuff in the outdoor industry for the last 35 years or so. And you know, he was the glue and the connection that brought all of us together. Yeah, Evan and I met, I think, just for this trip, but yeah, there'll definitely be more trips in the future. And yeah, looking forward to what the future holds for our industry. Yeah.
Did y'all really ever want to go climb Everest, or was this like, how did this dream really come together? What did it actually take to bring this crew up to Everest? Because I know expeditions aren't a small feat. It's not just planning a weekend trip. Can you talk a little about how the whole crew came together?
Sure, yeah. Manoah probably will have more info on this. I was one of the last minute additions to the team, so I don't fully know the full story, but even with my involvement, you know, a year out from when we departed to go climb Everest, you know, we were having meetings, you know, twice a week, more than that sometimes. We have some meetings with Conrad on Zoom, giving us tips, and Hillary and lots of other people in the community really gave their support. And of course, you know, Phil as the leader on the team was just pivotal on gathering everyone and finding, you know, the right pieces, the different team members, that everyone has their roles, and just also knowing the local community there in Nepal and how to interact with them. And, you know, I mean, yeah, we have seen like Pemba and Emery and some of the other people that were there on the team with us that were, I mean, they're amazing people, and some I consider them my best friends now, so it has really changed my life.
Yeah, as I just mentioned, yeah, it was mostly Phil, you know. Lately, you know, there's a lot more people, you know, of color, black people, African descent, all that, that are doing stuff in the outdoors. And yeah, there's a lot of programs and organizations, festivals that are really, you know, pivotal in introducing more people into these activities that we love to do. Mario mentioned earlier the intersection of climate change and diversity. You know, a lot of black communities and communities of you know, of color in the States, you know, it's not really something that a lot of us think about. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, Phil pretty much brought us all together. Some of us had been on other trips together. I think Knowles was a big part. Katie, he was the first Kenyan to summit this year. So him, Rosemary, and Phil, you know, are really involved with Knowles and as instructors. So they've like done a lot in our communities, informing and bringing up other people and stewards of the outdoors. But yeah, I guess that's about it.
So there's obviously the pre-trip preparation. You guys are all in different areas of the United States, correct? How did you all kind of prepare together as a team when you're stretched across demographics?
Yeah, it was, like I said, I guess it was almost somewhat perfect timing too with the pandemic, with, you know, being able to have the Zoom meetings and stuff and kind of do our logistics and planning that way. We're all used to being on Zoom anyways, so another hour or two in the evening was no big deal there. There was a training trip on the Pacific Northwest that the team went on, and then we also did a trip in January all together. I think that was the first time the team was all in one spot together. We went to Nepal before the climb for about a few weeks and just kind of got the lay of the land, got to know the culture a little bit. It was my first time leaving the country at all, so that was also part of the adventure for me. But yeah, I guess Manoah had more info there.
Yeah, it was a bunch of Zoom calls. I was like really close to bailing after like 2 years of 2 to 3 Zoom calls a week. You know, it was kind of rough to get the ball rolling. Yeah, I mean, expeditions of that caliber with a team of our size, you know, to Nepal, permits that are really expensive, and you're there for, you know, anywhere from a month to 2 months. But one thing that we wanted to do was kind of connect a bunch of different companies and brands in the outdoor industry, because that's what community is, right? It's not just, oh, this is like only a North Face sponsored expedition, or oh, this is only whatever brand you want to fill in the blank with. But yeah, as far as like team building and like, you know, all of us meeting up, I think before you came on, Evan, we took a trip out to Highlight Canyon, just south of Bozeman, where I live, and a few of us in the room live. Did some ice climbing, some skiing, and then yeah, we went over to Tahoma, Mount Everest. And I think the first time that 5 of us that are on the team now got together was in Ouray, Colorado, at the Ice Fest there. Yeah, Uncle Phil was there, Fred, Dom, Adina, and myself. But yeah, I think for myself, trips that are quite a bit longer are usually hard for me. You know, it's hard being away from home and my spouse. But with this group, it was super special and meaningful. You know, it felt like family immediately. And especially, you know, with all of our friends, our Sherpa friends out there. And, you know, it was really special for Phil to bring us in to his community there. And I think one really special thing about our expedition is that we went to the Kumbu climbing school in January, instead of how most expeditions run there, just going straight to the mountain. And that being the main objective, getting to the summit, no matter like what Sherpas say or, putting their lives in danger. So that felt really special for me, and yeah, I definitely want to go back to Nepal as much as I can and spend more time with everyone there and around the mountains.
You touched on so many points. But speaking about, going to the aspect of community and how that's what it takes to get these things done, and that's the most important part. With the KCC, the Khumbu Climbing Center, like how can we support them as much as they support us on the mountains?
Yeah, my understanding is that a lot of the funding of the KCC is through the Owsley Charitable Foundation, so that's always a great place to start. And then they were also in need of people to teach medical skills, and we even did some help teaching some of the courses there. And I took some photos just to have give them some media and stuff. And they obviously had a great team internally there too, and a great leadership structure. But yeah, I think just doing your research and helping them out any way possible. It's really for anyone not familiar with the KCC, the Khumbu Climbing Center, is it's in Fort Say in the mountains. You're way up there, almost at tree line, and it's just something that the community felt would really help improve the safety and the knowledge of everyone there. And so it's just kind of the community coming together to teach each other skills and knots and rescue techniques and all of that sort of stuff. So it's really a great resource for everyone climbing this. I mean, literally the gnarliest mountains in the world.
Yeah, definitely what Evan said. Yeah, funds are always a great way to make it happen. Yeah, the KCC runs every year, and Conrad dies over there, so yeah, you can maybe later elaborate more on everything, all the good that they do, but yeah, funds and gear as well. A lot of us, have connections with different companies and new gear, and everyone there, the Sherpa and guides and all of that, they burn through gear, We know how that is, but they're like up in the mountains living, at elevation, and that's like their full-time job, is making sure Westerners and other clients, are able to be safe. So that's really special work.
So, being this your first expedition, what were the biggest challenges?
Yeah, there was a lot of challenges with this trip. Partially just the logistics, the stuff that we went through. For me, it was partially being away from home for 2 months at a time and just being in an unfamiliar country. But like Manoah said, luckily the team, I mean, it's really a miracle if anyone's ever done a group trip, with more than 3 or 4 people. Usually it starts to go a little bit south sometimes, or there's some clicks that form, or there's some interpersonal connections that just don't really form the right way, and that really didn't seem to happen much with our team, and everyone was really on the same page a lot, and so that was perhaps the biggest thing for me, and what really helped the expedition go smoothly.
Yeah, it was all love. But yeah, nothing, at least in my mind, was bad about the expedition. It was really amazing every sense, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I guess I'm used to climbing in maybe 1 to 2 days, so the 2-month thing I guess I was like, is this still going on?
And what was it like to take photos at that elevation?
Yeah, I took all the photos that are here in the slideshow. So yeah, photography is my biggest passion, so it's really special to be able to photograph these beautiful landscapes, but also the uniqueness of our team as the first all-black expedition. Those were unique images that I got to kind of capture out there, so it was really cool, but also some frozen cameras and some fogged up lenses and some cold hands out there, but it was all worth it.
Since you were up there for so long and you get to know the environment pretty intimately, what sort of climate change did you notice while you were up there?
Yeah, so first time after I dropped out of college, one of my old geology professors, Dave Augustin, and Conrad over there were teaching a glaciology class at Montana State University in Bozeman, and I remember them showing a picture of the Kumbu ice fall. I forget when it was, Conrad, maybe like from the 70s, and then to 2012 when you guys went on your expedition there. But I mean, it was really obvious, you know, you could see how much the glacier had receded and how much ice had melted. But anecdotally, on our expedition, right about, what was it, Camp 3, from our summit push going up and then coming back down, you know, it was all frozen before we left. And coming back down, there was like inches and inches of water. It was like a full river that we had to wade through. And you know, just hearing firsthand experiences from all of our Sherpa friends who are up there all the time, year by year. Yeah, you just hear from them how much it's changed. And I mean, when you're at base camp for weeks or whatever it was, you can just hear and see stuff falling down all around you. But yeah, I mean, it's really obvious when you're up there. And I think the toughest part of the expedition for me was the heat. Yeah, from base camp going up to Camp 1 and Camp 2, even at Camp 3, it felt like it was 100 degrees, you know. The sun was blasting, and I mean, you're at like 6,000 to 7,000 meters there, and it's like way hotter than Texas. That's a trip.
Yeah, it was definitely pretty hot, and kind of like Manoah stated, yeah, I think the heat was one of the things that I didn't expect, and just the balance and the UV radiation at those elevations were pretty intense, and yeah, we were sweating and in tank tops a lot of the times, which is not what you really expect on an Everest expedition. And yeah, you definitely do see the change. Just kind of the photos kind of at the end are when we were descending back into camp. This is kind of in the middle, but you'll notice it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but we're kind of coming down a waterfall, and there's just collapsing ice, and the glacier's changing. And we were pretty fortunate that Nims had his camp, and his elite exped was nearby, and then next to him was Nat Geo, and so the Nat Geo crew stopped by, and they had a bunch of scientists, and they had Dawa, that was one of the North Face athletes, with them too. And so they just kind of gave us a talk about the data they've been seeing and the climate, how that's been affected there in that region, and how much. I think they mentioned that the base camp elevation actually is not what it's stated at anymore, since it's on the glacier. It's shrunk hundreds of feet over the past decades, so it's not what it was originally surveyed at. So it's definitely moving pretty quickly.
Thank you for sharing those observations. Has this trip inspired you to go on more expeditions?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to go back to Nepal this autumn, but unfortunately I left the schedule and all that. But yeah, I think when I first got into climbing, I had like this internal dialogue of how much carbon I'm using to travel, to climb or ski or whatever. So I tried to keep it local, but I think, this was my first overseas expedition. But what I realized, is that, as people with platforms or whatever, however small they may be, going to these places and especially like feeling the great energy of the people. I mean, it's so meaningful and so special, but it gives us a chance to like talk about all this stuff, especially with the communities that we're involved with, and to show how important, climate change is and all that. But traveling's pretty tight.
Yeah, this trip definitely inspired me to do future expeditions. I think that's probably the biggest gift that Phil gave us on this trip, was just the skill set, the skill set and that leadership mentality to, even if it's not across the world, of just a bigger, further trip in your own backyard, you know, and that you can do it and that you can be in charge. So that was really cool to see him in that position there and kind of give us the tools to move forward with our bigger, better dreams.
Yeah, being able to spend time in these really, truly special places and build these intimate connections, and it has an ability to really change your life. Coming back, how has this trip really changed your life?
Yeah, so, I don't know, yeah, we all went through the pandemic and all that. In Montana, you know, and a lot of like other small mountain towns, there's a big push to like not go climbing or whatever, you know, to minimize the stress on first responders and all that. But no one really said, okay, it's all right to go outside again. So I kind of was like just locked up and, you know, in my head and all that. And yeah, the last few years I was really considering like bailing on climbing and all that. But yeah, going to Nepal and experiencing like the spirituality of the mountains as opposed to what it can sometimes be here in the States, really rekindled, yeah, all that passion and stuff. Yeah, especially like with the companies that I get to work with. Sometimes all the marketing and stuff can feel, you know, impure or whatever, you know, just like doing all this stuff to sell some more stuff. But like going to Nepal and seeing how amazing everyone is there and how hard they work and the gear that they have to use, it's like, yeah, sweet. take some new stuff over there and spread it out. But yeah, as cheesy as it sounds, like yeah, going to Nepal definitely changed my life for the better.
Yeah, it definitely changed my life too, just in terms of new friends, really. Rosemary, who was on the team, stopped by my house as she was traveling through the area last week, and it was great to catch up with her again, and yeah, keep in touch with Eddie. Of course, Manoah, it's like my main man now. It's awesome. I didn't know any of these people before the trip. I just kind of, like he said, yeah, looked up to him on Instagram, and we had kind of a little community online, but to actually know these people and their personalities and be able to call them friends, to me, is the biggest change in my life.
I'd like to open it up to some questions from the audience if anyone has any.
What was it like to stand on top of the world?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, it was sweet. Fuda Dai and we got up there and it was still dark, so couldn't really see into like China and Tibet and stuff. But it was sweet. There was like 2 huge thunderstorms. There was one around Makalu, and then there was one over there in the opposite direction. Yeah, I don't know, it was pretty cool, you know, and seeing like the Tibetan prayer flags and just having time up there by ourselves. Yeah, really spiritual, you know, and one thing I think that I really connected with is how a lot of the Sherpa view the mountains as deities and, you know, a place of reverence. And that's always one thing that I found myself connecting with whenever, you know, I was climbing around here or wherever else, is like approaching the mountains with humility and, you know, just knowing that Mother Nature has all the power, instead of approaching with arrogance, you know, and just being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go conquer this thing or whatever. You're like, yeah, saying prayers and all that. Yeah, it's pretty tight.
Yeah, it was definitely, it was a really cool experience. I felt like the summit wasn't really about me, but about that entire team that had helped to get us that far. You know, the full circle team. I mean, everyone that we had on the expedition, it was 40 to 50 people. So it wasn't just the women of us. It was a huge production and a lot of effort. So to me, I just felt like I was representing everyone and the culmination of all of our hard work, kind of getting up to the top. And when I got up there, it was definitely a I'm not as fast as Manoah, so it's a little bit later in the day, so it's pretty crowded. And no, I definitely feel like this trip has helped to open my eyes on what's possible, and also just kind of that community building, like how Phil brought people together, and that's really hard work and something I probably would shy away from, but Phil kind of showed me that it's worth it to kind of bring these people together and bring them into your world. I had never done any kind of high altitude mountaineering or anything like that, and so Phil really helped teach us the ropes, and then he also imparted on us to like kind of keep passing that down, and that's kind of the name of the Full Circle Expedition team. It's just to keep that going and keep learning from each other and keep growing.
Yeah, same. I don't know, this whole thing, like, being sponsored and all this stuff has always been weird for me, I've always been like low-key, I tried to be a low-key dude. But there's this one gym that I'm sure some of you have heard about, Memphis Rocks, in Soulsville, Memphis, and being there in that place has like really made me feel comfortable, and like being a mentor and like having people look up to me. We all have our like faults and issues, and I like to focus on my own, but like being there and just seeing like how much these young kids look up to me, is super, super encouraging and affirming. But sometimes people ask me like who I looked up to when I was young, or in the realm of climbers or skiers or whatever, and I'm like, oh yeah, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, just start naming musicians that I looked up to, because I didn't know what climbing and all this stuff was until I was like 18, 19. But it feels like an honor that even just like a few people may think the same about me. So I think, that a lot of us understand that, but that's why this expedition and all the stuff that's kind of going around in the industry is important, One thing Phil has mentioned a lot to us is one time when his daughter Bahati was like 10 years old, she was like, I forget the story, but she was like standing on this little rock or something, and she said, oh, look, Dad, I'm like on top of Mount Everest. And like kids are very malleable, and like when they see someone else that looks like them doing something, then they know it's possible. And it doesn't have to be Sagarmatha, it doesn't have to be Chomolungma or Mount Everest, but just doing stuff in the outdoors, whatever it may be, going kayaking on the river, on a reservoir, going on a local hike, all these things will generate more stewards of our beautiful planet. So that's where it's at.
It's actually kind of a follow-up question. I had the chance to talk to Phil for a while, just about a month ago, and he gave me his perspective on what he sees as the legacy of this expedition, and in a historical context. And I'd just love to hear you guys have your own.
I mean, I don't really care about firsts, personally, like first ascents, they're cool and all, but anyway, our expedition, first all-black African expedition to Sagarmatha, but I don't really know of that many others. There's one to Denali, but besides that, it's really rare. But like I mentioned earlier, KG, he's an OG. Yeah, he's he's done a bunch of awesome stuff in the mountains, and he's been guiding in Kenya, his home country for like the last 40 or 50 years. Up Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya and a bunch of other places. But he was the first Kenyan to summit, and in 2022. And our expedition, we doubled the amount of people with melanin that have summited. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm Samoan. I was the first Samoan to summit, and like just this last week in Bozeman, I climbed with the first other Polynesian since I've been climbing. And it's like, all that stuff, you know, doesn't really matter that it's the first, but it is meaningful to some of us. But yeah, it's like, good stuff.
Yeah, to me it seemed like what I got from the expedition was hopefully it's just opening the door for, you know, more people of color to be, you know, in the mountains and on these expeditions and, you know, at the top of the game. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of news and press about the team, but in my mind, hopefully in the future it's a lot more commonplace and it's not as newsworthy and it's just commonplace and it's something that everyone can enjoy. And you know, the love of mountaineering is spread through all different communities. So that's what I hope to get from this expedition.
What's next for Full Circle or even individually? What do you plan on doing? Is there any goals or dreams that you guys want to do?
Yeah, so I think it's official now, but I know Phil has been working on making Full Circle a nonprofit. So that way, you know, the circle isn't just those of us who are there, but you know, that way it can be true mentorship where other people who want to do stuff that are either newer or that just want to connect with other people that look like them. Yeah, have a place to do that. And I know Thomas was on our expedition. We've been talking about so he's been trying to do the 7 summits, and I think he's done 5 of them. You know, there's the whole thing with I forget the one in the one in Russia. I forget the mountain name, Albert or something. Elbrus, yeah. But yeah, we were talking about going to Chamonix and climbing together. And you know, I'm not really a mountaineer. The highest I'd been before this was Tahoma, Rainier a few times, but yeah, being up high is pretty cool. So. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I definitely want to go back to Nepal and yeah, just spend more time there and visit some more of the mountains.
Yeah, similar to Manoah, I just kind of want to keep climbing and keep exploring in the mountains, and that's my passion and what I love to do. Yeah, I do feel like this trip kind of was really helpful. Just, I mean, it's kind of sad, but it's also a little bit of a certification, or like people see that you've been on Everest and maybe they invite you on other trips, and you know, before they might be like, I don't know about your skill set and this and that, but kind of having that experience has really, I think, opened some doors, and so I kind of want to take advantage of that and keep exploring. And I just want to give a shout out to Vanessa here in the front row, who is also a key member of this team behind the scenes. There was really, really bad slow internet at base camp, so we were oftentimes relaying messages to Vanessa to kind of spread the word, and she does a lot of the organizing behind the scenes, so we really could not have done it without you, so thank you.
Follow Full Circle on Instagram. Updates. Hi everyone. I'm gonna sit in the book. Okay. Yeah. So I was sort of doing behind the scenes communication stuff for Full Circle, and have been. I'm also a woman of color who entered this space through NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School, and when I was 18, Rosemary was my instructor in Patagonia. And it was the first time I ever saw somebody like me represented in the outdoor space. And then at the POW Summit last fall, I met Phil. So it was a really full circle moment for me as well. And I'm really stoked to continue working with Phil and wanted to talk a little bit more about what we have planned. So we are hoping to continue connecting folks of color with the outdoor spaces, and so helping people find their own Everest in many different ways. I think like Manoah was saying, there are so many different ways we can exist in this space, and it doesn't mean we have to conquer mountains. It might just be going outside or connecting with an elder or, you know, a young sibling or cousin, which is something that many communities of color love to do. So yeah, we're really excited to create more programming, especially around snow. I know this winter we have some avalanche safety courses and mainly just investing in spaces that are built for us, by us. So would love to continue to see all of you support Phil Henderson's work and continue expanding the outdoor state, because I think that's something that we're all here to do. So that's all. Thank you.
All right.